Thank you, everyone. I am sorry I'm not as exciting as penguins, but I'll do my best, okay? Thank you for being here. I know this topic is not the funnest topic in the world, but we hope to make it fun and simple because, again, it's something that is going to happen to everyone. So to kick it off, we're going to have a little bit of fun because at Desmond Funeral Homes, we like to put the fun in your funeral. See what I did there? So we're going to have some trivia. There's going to be 4 questions. I'm going to put up 4 questions. The answers, you can just shout out whatever you think the answer is. Anyone who gets it right, you can brag to your friends that you won funeral home trivia at the Lunch and Learn. Question number 1. Which actress and singer requested in her will that her casket include a 24-hour guard to prevent her casket from being stolen? So we've got Joan Rivers, Elizabeth Taylor, Carol Sutton, or Betty White. Okay, I hear Elizabeth Taylor. Wow, that's everyone. Any other guesses? Joan Rivers. Anyone else?
Betty White.
Okay, we're spread across the board. You are correct, my friend, Joan Rivers. Yep. She had quite the sense of humor. She even said that she wanted to be sponsored by Tupperware so that when she passed, she could be kept. So, she sure had a good sense of humor. Next question. Which superhero's funeral in the comics included almost every character from their universe paying respects? So we've got Marvel, Wonder Woman, Batman, or Superman. Okay, I hear Batman, Marvel. Any other guesses? Superman. We're spread across the board again. That is correct. It is Superman. Ding, ding, ding. Even the villains attended his funeral because they wanted him to stay dead, but he did not. Okay, next question. Who was the famous singer whose New Orleans jazz funeral inspired the tradition of celebratory music in the city? That is correct. Yep. This one's a kind of a no-brainer, Louis Armstrong. So you all win. You all get bragging rights. All right, last question. This is the hardest question. Which individual holds the record for the most attendees at their funeral? And this is in person. So we've got Princess Di, the Pope, Queen Elizabeth, or Michael Jackson. Princess Diana. I hear a lot of Diana. Any last guesses? You're all very close. It is the Pope. Correct. Yeah, it was pretty close. When you're the Pope for 27 years, you kind of get to know a few people, right? All right, now guess how many people attended his funeral?
2.5 million.
2.5. A little bit higher. Keep going. 4 million people. That's a lot of people. Yep. So that's a good question. I sure didn't. Yeah. So he had a lot of influence. Okay, here's what we're going to talk about today. So I'm just going to briefly introduce myself and the Desmond Funeral Home. Then we're going to talk about what each of you would do if you were responsible for making pre-arrangements or making funeral arrangements for someone. And then we'll talk about the reasons why so many families are now planning ahead of time. Then we'll briefly touch on what's called the Final Wishes Organizer and the acute loss period. Then we'll talk about the benefits of pre-planning your funeral. And then at the end, for those that would like, I'm going to come around and help answer any more of your questions. Inside, you guys have folders in front of you. Inside, there's our general price list. There's also a planning ahead form. Anyone who wants more information about pre-planning, just go ahead and fill out that form and you can leave it on the desk. I'll just come collect those after. And then there's also a lot of information about our funeral home and the services that we provide. So now you can decide whether you want to take a nap or actually listen to me or not. Okay, so my story. You're probably wondering, why is someone in his 30s working in the funeral industry of all the industries? And no, I do not feel like I'm 30. Here's why. Anytime I go and get a haircut, all the hair just sits in your lap, right? So many white hairs every single time. And I'm only 30 years old. Not a good start. So, but here's my story. So these are my grandparents. Awesome couple. Long story short, my grandpa was 71, perfectly good health, at home in his kitchen one day, and he said, I think I need some help. This was a man who never asked for help in his entire life. He was a farmer, he was a workhorse. He did not ask for help. Those were his final words. He had a heart attack, completely unexpected, passed away right there in the kitchen. My grandma, of course, was too grief-stricken to do anything. And so it left my mom and her brother, my uncle, to figure out all the funeral arrangements themselves. My uncle, who was, until that point, seemed to be a completely, normal, sane human being, lost his mind. He got very greedy. It was all money related. It got very, very messy. There was threats. There was not a good situation. The cops had to even get involved in this. So it left my mom to have to do everything by herself. I was a teenager. There was only so much I could do in the situation. Fast forward, only 6 months later, my grandma is then diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. 3 months later, for those of you that know, 3 months later, she passed. Yep, it's a very, very hard battle. We repeated the entire process again. The uncle, not a good situation, got greedy again, left my mom to do everything. To this day, my mom and her only sibling do not have a good relationship because of all of this. So then I heard about pre-planning. And I thought, if my grandparents had done, I didn't even know what pre-planning was. And I thought if they had done that, that would have prevented all of that. And again, there's a lot of reasons, which we're going to talk about, why families pre-plan, but that was one that would have really, really helped my family and would have kept them closer together instead of tearing my mom and her only brother apart. So, like I said, then just want to briefly introduce us and who we are. So, Desmond Funeral Homes, is there anyone here that has heard of our funeral home before? Okay, yeah, almost everyone. Yeah, I figured every hand was going to go up. Has anyone had a family member served by us before? Okay, about half, yep. So for those of you that don't know, we've been around for a very long time. It's been 109 years now, coming up this year. We are still family owned and operated to this day. Kevin, Kathy, and Margaret Desmond are at the funeral home every day. They run the show. So you are in very, very good hands, with the Desmond family. These are our 3 locations. So we have 3 locations conveniently located right here in Oakland County to serve, any of your family members. We have the Crooks Road location. We have the Woodward location that's just down the road here. And then we also have our newest location on Rochester Road, also in Troy. So regardless of where you live in the area, we have a facility and resources for you. So now I want you guys to picture for a second, imagine that you just received a phone call that one of your loved ones has just passed away. Maybe it's a parent, maybe it's a sibling, maybe it's a son or a daughter. And you are the person that is responsible for their final arrangements. So I want you to picture that person in your mind. The first thing that you have to consider is, what funeral home are you going to call? Are you going to go to the yellow pages and hope you pick a good funeral home? Or are you going to have that established ahead of time? The next thing that you have to consider is, who's going to make the decisions? There are over 75 decisions that need to be made within about 48 hours of someone's passing. That is not easy. That is not fun. By show of hands, how many of you have ever planned a funeral for someone before? Again, almost every single person. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So again, that is not something you want to have to do last minute. And then the third thing you have to consider is, what kind of an experience do you want you and your family to have at that person's funeral? We find that when families come in and get everything pre-planned, it makes it so much better for the family because they have a much more positive experience, unlike the situation with my family. So again, there's so many benefits to getting that all taken care of. So now we're going to talk about the reasons why so many families now are starting to pre-plan. First reason, we call this presentation the peace of mind. And that's because, one of the main benefits and reasons is there is so much peace of mind that comes from getting everything done. I'm going to pick on my new friend Bobby here. We were talking before this, and she told me that a couple years ago she came to Desmond Funeral Home. She pre-planned everything. And she said, I am so glad that I did that because now I don't have to worry about it. My kids don't have to worry about it. And they love that I did that. So good for you, Bobby. Yep, it feels good having it done, huh? Some other reasons why families do this is because we just talked about all those decisions that you have to make. Those are already decided. You can make sure that all those tasks, all those decisions are done for your family, so they don't have to scramble and put it together last minute. In the middle here, it's going to prevent any doubts or arguments among family members. So I shared my family story with my mom and her brother. It would have prevented all of that. So, no matter, like I said, I thought my mom and her brother were very close before this. But when it comes time to funeral, the boxing gloves tend to come out. Regardless of how close your family is, there's emotions involved, they're not thinking clearly. People are not themselves when it comes time to making funeral arrangements. And so this way you can prevent all of that. On the top right there, this is my personal favorite one, is it makes sure that your family has a positive experience at your funeral and not a negative one. It allows your family to just come to the funeral home or to the church, wherever the funeral is going to be, and they get to be with each other instead of spending 4 or more hours at the funeral home trying to figure out all of these logistics. And then the last one is it also makes sure that you can address the financial aspect ahead of time as well. So that way your kids aren't hearing who's going to cover the bill. Like with my uncle in that situation, it was all money related. When you mix funerals and money at a time of grief, it is not a good combination. And so this way you can just make sure that no one is stuck with the bill when it comes for the funeral.
And it locks in the price of today's cost.
Yes, yep. So we'll talk about that. But so like Bobby said, we have a way to make sure that the costs do not keep going up for you like everything else is in this world. So we'll touch on that in a little bit as well. So at our funeral home, we have what we call your final wishes organizer. This is probably the most important document you will ever fill out. I say that because what our final wishes organizer does is it puts together about 95% of all of your funeral arrangements ahead of time. And that, when I say funeral, that doesn't mean, you have to have 3 days of services. That could mean for cremation, that could mean for burial. There's so many different things that make up a funeral. This is how we put that all together for our families who come in and pre-plan. Does this look familiar, Bobby?
Yes.
Yes, yep, exactly. So for those of you that would like, what we would do is we would sit down at the funeral home or in your home and we would fill out your final wishes organizer. In the final wishes organizer, we're going to fill out everything that is needed for the death certificate. So that way when you pass, we can order those right away. Your family doesn't have to scramble and search for all of that information. The next thing we would fill out is any special instructions that you have. What kind of funeral do you want? Bobby shared that she was so glad because she got to plan it the way she wanted it. So it can be special for her and for her family in a very unique way. So we can customize it for each person individually. We'll also put down any special requests. If you wanted to have, a certain song played, or if you were, very particular about what cemetery you wanted to be at. All these different logistics you can make sure are put together. And then military record. Do we have any veterans in the room here today? Thank you. Thank you for serving. So for you, sir, we would go over all of the veterans benefits that you qualify for at a veterans cemetery. So that would be something we would talk about as well. And then the last thing we would put down is who's going to be the primary person responsible for your arrangements. Again, because you pre-planned, all that person has to do is make a phone call. We sit down and review everything with them, and then we proceed with plans. That's it. That's all they have to do. So pre-planning is a huge gift for your family. So I want you guys to think about why you came here today. I would guess it wasn't for the free dessert. So whatever your reason, yeah, okay, she said it was for the free dessert. That was a very good dessert. I even asked her for the recipe. So whatever your reason for coming here today was, our Final Wishes organizer is how we help you accomplish that reason. Everyone in here is going to have a different reason. I wanted to work in this industry so that families wouldn't have to go through what my family had to go through. Your reason might be different for wanting to pre-plan. But regardless of what that is, our Final Wishes organizer is how we help you to make sure that that reason is fulfilled. So briefly, I just want to touch on what we call the acute loss period. This is not something that is invented by the Desmond. This is a universal process that every human being goes through when they lose a loved one. I won't go into detail, but simply what it means is that your family is going to have three needs when you pass. They're going to have emotional needs, relational needs, and spiritual needs. So everything that we do, everything that the Desmond family is about, is making sure that your family has these three needs addressed. Without addressing these needs, families have a very hard time moving forward after they lose a loved one. What this means is that your funeral really belongs to your family. Because with all respect to you, the whole purpose of everything that we do is so that your family can begin healing. That's why funerals are the way that they are. They're not just designed that way just to make more money or to have more people come. They're designed to help your family move forward and begin the healing process. So that's why we do what we do, and we are very, very passionate about that at Desmond Funeral Home. All right, we're going to have another fun little game here. We are going to find out, I want you guys to shout out, what is the cheapest you remember a gallon of gas ever being?
18 cents.
18 cents.
29.9.
35 cents. 29. Okay, so far I hear 18. Can anyone top 18 cents? That is very, very, very cheap. You can't get anything for 18 cents nowadays. You look at gas now, it's almost $4 a gallon, right? So just like anything else in the world, because of inflation, funeral costs, they go up too. On average, funeral costs will double every 10 years. So now we're going to talk about the benefits of prepaying your funeral, like Bobby has done, and why families should prepay. Benefit number one, like Bobby mentioned, we have a way to guarantee and lock in all of our prices today. So regardless if you pass 1 year from now, 20 years, 30 years from now, 70 years from now if you're me, all of the funeral costs are locked in and guaranteed. Your family is not stuck with the remaining inflation balance. So that's benefit number one. The next benefit is all of your funeral arrangements can be transferred to any funeral home. So you might wonder, well, I don't know what the future is going to be like. I don't know if I'm going to be here. I don't know if I'm going to be in Florida or with one of my kids. I might move. If you move, no worries. All of your arrangements will then move with you. So they're completely transferable, regardless if anything happens to our funeral home or if you move, you don't lose a single penny. It's all protected. The reason why we can do that is because your funds are all protected by a third party. They are not held by the funeral home. And again, this is to protect your money and your investment, so that way if you needed to have them transferred, they can be transferred to any funeral home in the country. So it does not have to stay locked in with Desmond. It can go anywhere if you go anywhere. Next benefit is with our pre-plans, we include what's called out-of-area protection. Does anyone in here have a crystal ball that tells them when and where they are going to pass? I know I sure don't. By show of hands, has anyone ever heard of someone that passed away from their home? Almost every single person. Yep. Again, with our pre-plans, we have what's called your out-of-area protection. So what this does is it covers all costs and, more important, all the logistics to bring you back into our care no matter where you happen to pass. So whether you're in Chicago or at your second home in Florida or in Mexico, regardless of where you are, all your family has to do is make one phone call and everything would be arranged to bring you back into our care. Because again, no one knows when or where that day is going to happen. The next benefit is we have payment options. So as many of you know, when you have to pay for a funeral when someone passes, it's got to be covered in full, and that is a very big financial burden on families. So when you come in to do prepaying, we have very flexible payment options for anyone's financial situation. And so again, regardless of what your bank account looks like, we have options that will work for you as well. And so we are able to help families to make sure that the costs are locked in that way that they don't have to keep paying as far as they don't have to make sure their family doesn't have to keep paying for it after they go. For those that do the payment plan, instead of paying for it in full, we have that option as well. But for those that do the payment plan, they have protection while they make those payments. Meaning that if you were to pass away and you were still paying for your funeral, the rest is entirely covered for your family. So they have that benefit and that protection as well. Because no one wants to go to their kids and say, "Merry Christmas, we paid for our funeral, you're welcome." And then they hear, they still owe $7,000 on their funeral. Yeah, not what you want your kids to hear. So again, just like anything else in the world, the longer you take to pay for something, the more it's going to cost. That extra cost covers this benefit of paying off the entire balance if for any reason you happen to pass early. So again, those are the benefits. We talked about this as well. I'll show you mine here. So with out of area protection, everyone gets one of these. This is your out of area protection membership card. So it would have your name on it and the phone number that your family would call if you were to pass 75 miles or more away from your home. So whether you pass here or whether you pass away from your home, everything is covered to bring you back into our care. The last thing that we have with our pre-plans, this is something new and very unique to our funeral home specifically. There's not another funeral home around here that's doing this. It's called your Ever Plan. How many of you have a book that's called What Happens When I Die? Or you're starting to put things together about, yeah, there's books written about this. Someone was just sharing, Bobby was sharing with me that she's got this book started together. Well, what happens if something happens to that book, or it gets lost, or there's a fire and it's gone? Then what? All of that information is gone. Everplans is our digital platform that lets you view all of your funeral information from your computer. More important than that, though, is you can store all of your most important documents that your family is going to need when you pass in one simple, safe place for them. For example, wills, trusts, insurance, medical information, bank information, passwords, the list goes on and on and on. When you pass, your family has this endless list of things that they're going to have to take care of. If they don't have that information stored, it is a nightmare to figure all of that out. It can take months, if not years, to get that all sorted out if you don't know what you're doing. So Everplan, again, it safely secures all of that for them. The best part about your Everplan is you can share this directly with them, whoever you want to have access to this. So that way, all they have to do is log in from their computer wherever they are in the world, and they have instant access to anything that they will need when that day does come. So this has been game-changing for the families because they don't have to worry about, now I have to do all of this. It's already there for them. So, and again, the purpose of Everplans is so that way you are leaving your family with a legacy to remember you by and not a mess to have to figure out. No one wants a mess to figure out when they've just lost, a loved one. So what I'm going to do now is just to wrap up, I'm going to talk about the process. How does pre-planning actually work? So here's how the process works though. So the first thing that we would do is we would put together all the information that is needed for the death certificate. And again, that way your kids don't have to worry about that at all. It's already ready to go at the funeral home. The next thing we would do is we would select what kind of funeral do you want to have. Every single person in this room may want something different. There are no right or wrong answers. There are a lot of different options available to everyone here. So we would put together your specific game plan for your family so that way they don't have to worry, did she want to be buried? Did she want to be cremated? I don't know, she told me this. No, she told me this. All of that can be documented for them so they don't have to bicker and argue about the different options. And then the last thing is we would go over all the different funding options that are available for you so you can make sure that those costs are locked in, and more importantly, that your family is not going to be faced with the bill at the time of your funeral. I don't even want to know what the cost of funerals are going to be in 10, 20 years with how things are going. So this way you can just prevent that from happening for them. Make sure that they can have, again, a legacy to remember you by and not be stuck with the bill. So again, before I turn it over to our next speaker, I just want to open it up to some questions and answers though. We went over a lot of information, but what questions do you all have for me?
How secure is that Everplans?
Good question. So let me ask, do you use online banking?
Yes.
they use the exact same security levels as online banking. Because obviously this is very important information. This cannot go out to anywhere. So they have the top level security notches on this, just like online banking, to make sure it only goes to you and whoever you share it with. Yep, great question. Another one.
The only one that can change it is you?
Correct, yep.
Change.
Yep, and you can, the nice thing too is you can add to this anytime you want. You can write your own obituary if you want and put it in your Everplans. You can write what kind of flowers you want, what kind of songs. You can edit this anytime you want. And that way, anything you put in there, your family will be ready to go for. Did we have another question?
I wasn't clear if there's a fee for the very beginning Final Wish organizer.
Nope, so great question. So she asked, is there a cost for the Final Wishes organizer to come and sit and meet with us? The answer is no. That is something free of charge that we offer to all families. All you got to do is schedule an appointment with me. We would sit down and I would help you fill that out. There is no cost for that. The only thing you pay for is your actual funeral expenses. That's it. Mm-hmm. Yes. Any last questions? Okay, and again, I know this was not the funnest topic, but I hope we made it a lot simpler for you. Thank you so much for coming here, and again, I'm going to turn it over to our next speaker now.